Mhm.
Happy,
So,
happy Saga Dawa.
yeah, right.
So this month is the Vaishaka month. Vaishaka, then in Tibetan, short, Saga, part of Vaishaka. So Vaishaka is in the Indian calendar, the classical Indian calendar. I think technical term is the Indian civil calendar. Um, Vaishaka is the second month of the new cycle. Mm. In Tibetan, it's called the last month of spring. um, so sometimes it's called the third month, as in the third month of spring. Sometimes it is called fourth. But anyway, in the mainstream Tibetan tradition, it's the fourth month of the Tibetan calendar, which corresponds with the second month of the Indian calendar. But because all these different lunar calendars, actually, the thing about lunar calendars is that because it's basically 360 days in that calendar, and as we know, as the Earth goes around the sun, it's 365 and a quarter or whatever, right? So then every few years, every 3 years, I believe, each of these lunar calendars have to introduce an extra month to compensate for the missing days, so that it's pegged. You could say the lunar calendar is pegged to the solar calendar. Otherwise, the only example of a quote unquote pure lunar calendar is the calendar used by Muslims for their ritual purposes. So in their calendar, they do not introduce an extra month every 3 years. So the result of that is, it's not like they don't know about this. It's just that they choose not to. In fact, some of the greatest astronomers in the history of like discovering these things were Muslim astronomers, but they chose not to. Okay, so the consequence of that is their ritual calendar moves all around the solar calendar. So, like the most important month in their religion is Ramadan. I'm sure you've heard of that. So Ramadan can move. This year it's in January, next year it's in February, next year it's in March. I don't know if it actually moves by that, but there is some regularity to that movement, so that Ramadan can be anywhere around the year. As far as I know, all the other cultures that use the lunar calendar, they peg it to the solar calendar, including the Jewish, I think, also introduces an extra month. So because of that, across Asia, Vaishaka month can kind of be happening at different months, anywhere between May to June. Yeah, the variation of May, sometimes in rare cases, even like in April. This year, it seems like all the celebrations of the different solar calendars are meeting at the same time. Rare occurrence, but it happens. How they introduce, by the way, where they introduce the extra month varies from calendar to calendar. That's why there's a chance of them meeting once in a while. It's not fixed. It's not like every 3 years we add an extra like 6 month or we add an extra 12 month. Each calendar's system seems to introduce their extra month at different points. So they all meet together. So this year, all the different cultures are meeting in terms of their calendars. And so then this upcoming Thursday is the full moon of the Vaishaka month. And so then Tibetan call it the Saga Dawa Du Chen. Du is like, in this case, Du is like a festival. Chen is great. So the great festival of the Vaishaka month, which then commemorates the awakening, the enlightenment of Siddhartha, which is said to have happened on the full moon day of the Vaishaka month. In Theravada communities, in Theravada cultures, they say that not only did Buddhahood happen on the full moon of Vaishaka, birth also happened on the full moon of Vaishaka, and Mahaparinirvana also happened on the full moon of Vaishaka. So for Theravada traditions, this upcoming full moon, it's, all three major events in the life of the Buddha occurred. In the Tibetan tradition, the awakening and the Mahaparinirvana is said, they say that it happened on the full moon day. Birth for them, they say it happened on the 7th day. There is a minority tradition among Tibetans that say that the birth happened on the 8th day. Yeah, so can't blame them for not, getting it all straight and in agreement for something that happened so long ago. 2,600 years or so ago. Yeah. So anyway, probably what's important for us as practitioners of Buddha Dharma, then whatever month we think all these things happen, then just to simplify things and say, whatever month most people say it happened, we can take that month, although I don't think we do that very well, but we can take that month and let that month, be like the Ramadan for Muslims, Lent, for Christians. Then we can take this Saga Vaishaka month and kind of intensify, bring focus to our practice, recognizing that this is Vaishaka, the season of great significance in terms of for Dharma practitioners of the Buddha Dharma. So the great significance lie in the fact that the Buddha, major events in the life of the Buddha occurred on this particular month. This morning, so I've been doing these daily Saga Dawa practice with a group on Zoom. Started on the 15th, we'll go all the way to the 24th. So this morning I shared that, somewhere I saw kind of a pithy one line by Jongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, who by most accounts is an eloquent emanation of Manjushri, so to say. Please don't take these things too literally. But I think we can say he, in most of when he teaches the Dharma, it's Manjushri activity, wisdom activity. You can see very clearly. So, in his eloquence, just don't look at his Facebook. There he is, just what's the word they say? Baiting, you know. He's
Yeah.
yes. He on his Facebook personal Facebook page, he baits. He would post inflammatory things. I don't know exactly what he thinks about these things, but you can see all the uh, eager to be disciples, all like bowing down to everything he says, and he posts like inflammatory, like political things, like Kim Jong Un is great, stuff like that. Ignore, I would say, his Facebook page. I stopped following. At one point, I was following. I was like, no, I don't need to. But when he sits on the throne and teaches the Dharma, that Manjushri activity comes through. And I have very good friends who are his students, and I absolutely trust my friends' judgment. And these are not just students sitting from far, far away. These are students that he visits their homes, and very level-headed people who who can say things to me like, gosh, he's constantly uh, attracting controversy, and they will say things like, like, God, who the heck wants to be his girlfriend? That's like a terrible, terrible position to be in. So these friends are level-headed, and they absolutely trust him, his integrity. But he's a trickster. He likes to poke. Anyway, my point. The one line somewhere I remember reading, that's so eloquent, I think. He in talking about Buddha Shakyamuni, he said, because you were born, I am now so fortunate. Because you were born, now my life is meaningful. When we are able to say that ourselves, standing in front of Buddha Shakyamuni, when you're able to come into EBS, beautiful shrine room, and see the Buddha image and have that coming from your heart, because you were born, I am fortunate, and actually mean it, then we can be sure now, yes, Dharma has entered our hearts. Still quite a bit of work to do. We don't always choose to follow where the Buddha is pointing, but at least that recognition, that because you were born, I am so blessed, I'm so fortunate. So that is, the significance of this month, that because he was born, we are so fortunate. Now, of course, in a lot of devotional material, sometimes in a poetic license, in a mode of exercising poetic license, very bombastic exaggerations, even oh, you are so great this way, you are so great that way. Yeah. And we should not get carried away, by some of these exaggerations. What I mean by that is, if we take it too literally, oh, you're so great this way, you're so great that way, then we run the risk of turning Buddha into an all-powerful God that we expect to solve our problems, to save us. Maybe in the West, we don't have this problem because the way Buddha and the idea of Buddha is introduced. I don't know. I think, relatively speaking, maybe in Asia, there's more, oh, you're so great, you're so great. So then for the West, I think the mistake to make is then to not develop this kind of warmth and appreciation of the example of the Buddha. To not have this kind of closeness, And why is that a problem? It's not a problem in that absolute sense that it is a problem. Yeah, it's not a problem in the absolute sense that, oh, definitely it's a problem. But it's a problem in the sense of like, then often our Dharma practice has captured only one dimension of our being. Now, of course, we are all constituted differently. But no matter how differently we're constituted, we have our rational side, we have our intellectual side, we have our contemplative side, but we also have the feeling side. And some of us may not want to admit so readily we have the feeling side, Especially if you're attracted to Buddhist teachings. And then Buddhist teachings presented to the Western world thus far has tended to emphasize or de-emphasize the feeling side. And so then our Dharma fills up all the other sides, and then the feeling side, we kind of bracket aside and push it to one corner. Everything is fine as long as no big disruptions happen. And then you go along and you think, oh, I get it. I understand Dharma. I like it. I practice it. All of that. But when things rupture, that dark feelings corner, dark with regards to Buddha Dharma, not necessarily dark, but dark in the sense that you're not allowed Buddha Dharma to shine into because you think, oh, no, that's I put it over there. But often when things fall apart, as Pema Jordan puts it, when things fall apart, that dark corner that you have not allowed Buddha Dharma to shine into will spread, so to say, and may cause you to abandon Buddha Dharma. So watch out for that. I'm not saying, you need to get to like this, oh, praising the Buddha. But if Buddha is just an abstract, Buddha as a person is just an abstract, then we may run the risk of ignoring, not attending to that feeling side, which is part and parcel of, our being, our psyche, which is not fixed, can be changed, of course. Not being in a big B, So anyway, Saga Dawa season, and then in some traditions, apparently in the Vinaya text found in the Tibetan canon, there are some passages that say that all virtues that are created during Saga Dawa month are increased a millionfold. I've even come across references to 360 million. 360 is obviously related to 360 days, but 360 million times more potent, all the virtues that are created during Saga Dawa. Then here and there, you also hear people saying, and that also applies to non-virtues. 360 million times magnified. Then, of course, it's like, eesh. Can I skip over this month, Can I skip over this month? When I first came across, this notion way back, that during special times of the year, special days, special months, right, the actions, the virtue that you create is magnified 360 million or millions of times, I was, kind of skeptical, like, I don't know, this don't make sense to me. Especially when you realize the arbitrariness of these calendars, right? When you have only one calendar as a reference point, you think the whole world operates, like that. But then when you even just look at the various calendars that various Buddhist cultures have, at least for me, you can't take very seriously, like, it's this month and not this month. So karmically, how does that happen, right? So that it kind of, then for me, it kind of like, like take it with like, a pound of salt, not just a grain, right? That actions done during Saga Dawa month magnified 360 million or millions and millions of times. So for a long while, I just put that aside and say, no, I don't know. Yeah? Then especially the scary sounding things of like, and then, non-virtues also millions of times. That I just completely like, nope, sorry, not entertaining that, That just speaks to how most of us, right? I think according to some survey that I've seen, you ask the general American public, do you believe that there is heaven? And the percentage that you're going to get compared to do you believe that there is a hell, way higher for heaven and way lower for hell. So somehow, it speaks to how we only like the good stuff, right? But anyway, and then I came across, just in passing, he doesn't even explain, but it gave me an insight into how is it possible that virtues created during this month is magnified without going into 1 million or 2 million or 360 or 322. Leave aside those numbers, right? How virtue can increase millionfold. So Kyoba Jigten Sumgun, founder of Drigun Kagyu, in one of his teachings, and this teaching pertains actually to the 4 festivals, the 4 great festivals. This one is called the Festival of the Awakening of the Buddha. Then 49 days later, the festival of the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. And then the festival of the descent from the heaven of the 33. And then the festival of displaying the miracles, which happens in the first month of the Tibetan calendar. In that teaching, he says, he addresses this notion of multiplying, million multiply a month. But he says it in such a way that he's not even like answering my question. But it answers my question, my doubts. And I think this is key. He says, and during this time, if you engage in virtue and remember the significance of this time, then virtue gets multiplied millionfold. Now I can start to accept and entertain this, right? Because Buddha says mind is the determinant of the quality of actions. And so elsewhere, like in the recollecting the virtues, recollecting the qualities of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So there's a common text like that that is recited daily in Tibetan monasteries. Actually, during mealtime, they recite this first. At the end of that, it says, the noble Buddha, the qualities of the noble Buddha is inconceivable. The quality of the Dharma, sublime Dharma, is inconceivable. The quality of the noble Sangha is inconceivable for those who have the capacity to have faith, confidence in these inconceivables. Then the ripening of their karma becomes inconceivable. And so it's saying, when we, especially in the month of Saga Dawa, whenever we are mindful enough to know, I have chosen good, I have chosen a cause of happiness over a cause of suffering in the course of my actions, both body, speech, and mind. Whenever we remember that, I have chosen the skillful over the unskillful, of happiness over suffering, not just for myself, but for all beings. When we remember that, and then we also remember, and this is done now in the month of Siddhartha's being born in the world, achieve enlightenment, pass into great nirvana. When those interdependencies come together, and yes, the season also coming together. And what is the power of the season, so to say? It's the power of so many people having their focus of this season. So when all of that come together, yes, then merit can multiply millionfold. Again, just as a reminder, maybe you don't like the word merit. Maybe it reminds you of the supposed, not supposed, but maybe it reminds you of the corruption and the of religious authorities in cashing in on people want to multiply merit. Yes, there is that problem for sure in the Catholic Church, in the Buddhist monasteries, whatever. Yes, that happens. But just because that happens, doesn't mean therefore merit is irrelevant. Merit is the fuel. Merit is the fuel for any kind of happiness you experience. Without that fuel, forget about accomplishing Buddhahood. Even just this life becomes more and more miserable without this thing called merit. All we're saying is making the choices that are productive of happiness. And those choices accumulate a force. And that force is what we call merit. Just because the word has certain resonances with Western notions of worthiness and non-worthiness. I think that's where we don't like the word merit, because it seems to suggest there's something about you that makes you worthy or not worthy, right? It's not about that. It's talking about, have you built up the resources? Have you built up the causes for happiness or not? For well-being or not? For good or not? So merit, the accumulation of merit and the accumulation of wisdom has to go hand in hand to arrive at the twofold attainment of Buddhahood, of both benefiting self and benefiting others. So then what to do with the notion of and negative things that you do during this month also multiplies 360. Here is the good news, I think. In this case, it is not that unskillful actions that you take during this time, this season, automatically becomes a million multiplier. Just like, you know, the choosing of happiness that you do, the merit that you accumulate, that you build up, it's also not automatic. You have to mentally, or from the heart, Shakyamuni did this. So likewise, in the non-virtue, in choosing suffering, you know, it only gets multiplied, you know, from my understanding, if you do the same. Oh, Buddha, Siddhartha attained enlightenment this month. I'm going to go toss a kitten into the river now. Yeah, and you have to create virtue with that, you know, like despite the Buddha, you know.
Right.
Yes. Then yes. Yeah. So anyway, offering my thoughts on Saga Dawa, on Vaishaka, and how we can, you know, take advantage of this time, this Buddhist Lent, so to say, to fortify our practice, to bring focus to our practice. In Bhutan, you know, this whole month, many restaurants close, except for vegetarian restaurants. Because many Bhutanese who are generally not vegetarians would observe the fast of becoming vegetarian and vegan during this whole month. Then by law, no meat can be sold this month in Bhutan. This whole month. My Bhutanese friends tells me, doesn't help people buy larger freezers. Like before Saga Dawa, like, you know, go shopping and pile up rather than saying, let's just reduce, you know, this month. This is what happened, right? When you get the government to make laws based on your religious beliefs. Then people will find ways, you know, just to go, you know. So, hallelujah. Let's keep our country from doing things like this. Doesn't matter, Buddhist, Christian, whatever. Leave alone religion. Let it be choices that we make, you know. I'm preaching to the choir probably, so don't need to say much about that.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Last night I was trying to print. Oh, and I didn't buy a printer for a long time because I hate electronics and it drives me crazy. So I was going to print that Saga Dawa that we're doing each morning. And nothing was going right with my computer or my printer. And then it got worse, and it seemed to get worse. And I had my printer upside down, and it said I had a thing, and I did not. And I was really upset. And I was cussing. Then here I am trying to make a copy for Saga Dawa. And I say to myself, Karen, you know you shouldn't be saying this, cuss, cuss, cuss. So at least, I had that little thing over my head saying, you shouldn't be doing this, but at least I'm making the copy so I can do it
Mm-hmm.
because I was out of control.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God. I just hate printers and stuff like that.
So that's not a question, is it?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
Am
Good.
I gonna
Because
be
I have more answers.
okay? Am I gonna be okay? Will I, make it to heaven? Say what then?
This is basically, knowing what battles to fight and what not to fight, It's like, I take it to Kinko's or whatever and say, figure it out for me.
I used to do
Or
that.
buy a printer and give it to a nearby teenager.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, although most teenagers are like, why are you printing?
Yeah.
That's like even like, like passe, like
I
print.
understand. Yeah.
What does that mean?
And then guess what?
Yeah. So
Then Dr. Lai says, well, we're not using that copy. You have to make another copy.
yeah, of course, And so so yeah, like the some kind of tablet,
I
and
know, I know, I know.
PDF in the tablet, then delete, another one delete, like building sand mandalas, with your iPad, dissolve, 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 dissolve. Then also with this, I don't have the trouble of like, what am I going to do with this now? I'm not supposed to throw it in the trash, you know. And then the other thing is like, oh, I'm supposed to burn. But that's like in the days where burning stuff is not a problem. Now I also feel guilty over burning.
Right, me too. I've got a bunch
So
of
it's
stuff
like,
that needs to be burned.
so la la.
Oh.
What about using things that you could burn, like to shred and compost? Would that be
Yeah, I mean, yeah, those are different choices that we make, So I actually shred them or give it to a shredder so that it doesn't go to landfills, but it
right?
gets recycled.
Okay,
Yeah. So
that's a good idea
yeah.
because I've worried about it. I've
Right,
thought
right.
about that. I've got a bunch of stuff in my closet that needs to be,
Yeah, so I take it to some place that they say they recycle. Of course, you never know in the end, but what to do, right? There are limits to what you can, how the lengths that you go, and you take them by their word and say they recycle. And then you think, when you put this in and say, may this, right, wherever it goes, make a connection with others to the Dharma, so that when they use the paper product, including then when I talk about recycling, some of my friends, like especially Asian friends, they're like, sometimes they turn this into toilet paper and people are wiping their butts with it. I say, well, what can I say? So I can only say, however they contact this, in whatever form, may they make a connection with the Dharma. And I said, and it reminds me, like in the Zen tradition, right? There's a koan. I don't know if you all know this koan. There's a koan that is something along these lines, right? Somebody asks a Zen master, "What is Buddha?" And he says, "Nothing but a dried, literally dry shit stick." Yes. Nothing but a dry shit stick. Okay, first to explain, what the heck is a shit stick? It's what we call toilet paper. That's how people clean themselves, like with these kind of reed things. Yeah. and you use that to clean yourself. Okay. So that's the Zen master's answer. Dry means like it's not soft anymore and it's just uncomfortable. And also it's been used. Like reused device for cleaning. And so it's like, what does that mean, right? So what that means is he is saying the job of the Buddha, so to say, we use the Buddha to clean our mess. But if we objectify Buddha, which is what many people tend to do, then it becomes a dried natural toilet paper. Zen humor, So then I said, it's okay, you recycle all these texts, however people use the paper, may they connect with the Dharma, So, where are you with your text?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question about let's say that you have your mind partitioned off, like you said earlier, you wouldn't know that you were doing that. You think you're earnestly practicing
Yes.
and stuff, but then there's this hidden corner,
Yes.
but it's hidden.
Yes.
So, maybe there's some, like you said, things fall apart and it breaks out of its holder. If you're lucky, that happens. But how do you think that devotion to the Buddha answers that problem?
Here specifically, I'm talking about devotion to the Buddha as in like not let the Buddha be just an abstract or historical figure,
Right.
let the Buddha be a living presence, so to say, right? Almost
Yeah.
like how Christians talk about Christ, but let's not be too like turned off by that notion, because so that's all that I'm saying. It's like, I guess what I'm saying is like, don't dismiss so stubbornly the range of practices that different Buddhist cultures have developed over time. One thing about our American attitude, is that I can always make it better. And I can pick and choose, like this is a very American thing, more so than other places that I've seen, I've visited, I've lived in. And I don't necessarily think it's a problem per se. We just need to recognize what are the downsides to that. And I think the downsides to that is we are very quick to just say, no, don't make sense, and we want to throw it out. So I'm advocating for like full immersion. But I'm also, maybe, I don't know if some of you have hung out with me long enough, I'm also not a traditionalist in that sense, and saying, oh, it has to be done this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. But I'm advocating a kind of going for a full immersion, but not blindly, right? Going for full immersion, knowing that what you're immersing in ways in which different cultures have developed devices, methods that have been helpful and may or may not be helpful to our particular circumstance, our particular context, but we won't know until we try it. And even when we try it, it may not immediately have any meaning, but not to, chuck it out. Is what I'm advocating, even like, people who say, I don't know, many lifetimes, la, 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 all of that. Well, first of all, I think for all of these like teachings, I think one of the problems is like we take it so literally, including the things that we reject. We reject mostly on the basis of taking it literally. Then, of course, many of the things that you read, you have to reject, because if you take it literally, it's like it doesn't make any sense. But then you immediately have a, kind of this rigid line of like, yes or no. The world is divided into yes or no. Rather than, well, maybe, who knows? So it's related to being comfortable with ambiguity. Being comfortable with not just like, more important than ambiguity, what is ambiguity after all? Ambiguity is uncertainty. Uncertainty is just another word for impermanence. But the thought, all things are uncertain. Including your efforts that you put into practicing the Dharma, including that, is uncertain. Do you want to put skillful effort into making it more stable and more steady and therefore more certain? Yes. But how much expectation you should have that because you're putting effort, therefore it should become more certain? Zero. If possible, of course not possible. We all do things because we have certain expectations of certain returns. Let's be realistic, yes. But keep that in check.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's uncertain. That's the main thing that Buddha had to say. It's uncertain. And so to be
Thank you. That's very good. I mean, because it's true that I'm practicing to protect myself from the uncertainty of old age and death.
Mhm.
That's exactly.
Mhm.
And so, good to find that out, or and realize that it's not really going to work.
Mhm.
Not in that way.
Right.
Yeah.
You have mentioned about a questioning mind, which I thought was an interesting statement, especially as an academic.
A what? Sorry?
Academic.
No, a what mind? Sorry, I missed the first part.
Questioning.
A what? Sorry?
Open mind.
Oh, yeah.
Question.
What about?
Being willing to question and
Oh, yeah.
investigate and consider and think about without immediate rejection.
Right. And that's the Buddha's, basic. Now, of course, the Buddha also says, like if you're just feeding the obsession of, because, right, the questioning mind. Okay, so we elaborate a little on that, right? And the questioning mind, the investigation, right, should not be in search of certainty either. because then, it becomes like almost a compulsion that you cannot control. So this
That's a good point.
yeah, so this questioning is to be used skillfully as a way to explore, I think, the various terrains and textures of uncertainty.
Yes, I love the word explore. That one really resonates well with me.
All the
Sometimes I
Yeah.
see some, I want to see why someone else or other group of people find value here.
Uh-huh.
So I have found that to be helpful just for me personally.
Mhm.
It's not what I normally go with, but
Yes.
there's value. I mean, just let's take something as an example. Let's take Islam. Okay,
Uh-huh.
not something I'm all that familiar with.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm going to reject it because it's not what I'm familiar with.
Mhm.
Well, maybe there's something interesting here. It
Mhm.
appeals to a lot of people.
Mhm.
So it triggers a certain inquisitiveness
Mhm.
as opposed to that's not where I am. So
Yeah.
forget it.
Right. Right. Yeah. So when we apply this, even in the Buddhist teachings, like in the end, really, this investigation. Now, sometimes, like I would say, in the Tibetan, especially in the scholastic aspects of Tibetan Buddhism, which has a very strong element of that. It's after all, it inherited a certain strains of Buddhist culture, Buddhist high culture that developed in India and associated with the great universities. So India at one time had, their equivalent of Oxford, Cambridge, not just in religious subjects, not just in theology, which is where Oxford, Cambridge started, but also in the secular topics. So Buddhism also has that tradition. So sometimes in the scholastic tradition, there is the appearance that what they are trying to get you to arrive at, to reach, is like certainty. Right? Certainty. I appreciate that, so that there's no, in a way you could say, there's no messy thinking. Huh? Messy thinking is not, the same as to be able to sit with uncertainty and ambiguity. I think we should not confuse the two. So, that side that emphasizes like certainty, for me at least, I see it as we can clean up messy thinking. Yeah, we can do that, and we should do that to whatever degree that we want to do that. We can do that, and we should do that to clean up messy thinking. Now, that is not the end. That is not the goal in itself. That is just one aspect of working with one's mind, especially in terms of learning the Dharma. Now, after learning the Dharma, when we now implement the Dharma, there, I think, and sometimes because of the emphasis on this scholastic side, sometimes I think this translation is not made very well. That when this kind of certainty that arises from, training clear thinking in an intellectual sense, when that is applied onto like the path, meaning our process of waking up, the certainty now plays a different role. The certainty that arose from that kind of study, that kind of analysis, they play a different role now when it comes to the process. And it cannot be, I feel, that like you stubbornly keep to this certainty and then expect, right, your process to match this certainty. It's not like that. So it will serve you well to kind of develop this kind of clear thinking as you enter into the phase of developing ability and capacity to sit with ambiguity and uncertainty with a clear mind. The mere fact of being able to sit with ambiguity and clarity is not enough. Ambiguity and uncertainty is not enough. The mere fact of being able to sit with that, because that can also come from a place of confusion. As in, oh, I give up. Which we all do that. But that's not progressing on the path. Progressing on the path is clear-eyed about, how uncertain and how ambiguous and how messy right now it is. But you're not letting your impulse to like control and fix and, and force everyone into those boxes that you have come up with. You refrain from doing that.
That is so well stated. Something that people simply don't get. We're going to go with this as certainty, and you're all going to fall in line.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate what you just said.
I don't know if I can repeat that, so hopefully it's being
Recorded.
It's recorded, so we've got
uncertain,
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so to say something about the text, right? So the text that we've been looking at, it has this flavor, right? Of like, gosh, very certain, and I know, when we read, we if our mind is in a certain space, we read that, sometimes we get inspired. Oh, then other times they're like, I don't know, And this is precisely, I think, to kind of, I didn't plan it this way, but I think we can now take this discussion we just had and apply it to a text like this. I think it's a mistake if we think, this is how it is.
Yeah.
No, it's not. But all this kind of like, 1.1, 1.2, 2.3, that is a particular way of training the mind so that, the mind becomes clear. You can keep track, right, of all the variations and the definitions and all that. But that's just, tools that are useful for when you take the practice to heart. When you take your practice to heart, it's not like that. But now what you have is reference points. What you have is vocabulary. What you have is context.
Can you all tolerate another question?
Sure.
I've been playing with this idea of these realms that we discussed in the book earlier,
Mhm.
like the hell realms, the hungry ghost realm, the god realms, and so on. And I've been applying those to observations and a current experience, actually being alive.
Mhm.
I think there's a tendency, or at least when I initially was exposed to it, to think about these as being something that happens after this incarnation.
Right, right.
But I'm starting to, I mean, I've pretty much rethought that, and I'm seeing these realms here and now,
Yes.
observable with people living them.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this a correct interpretation?
Totally. It's totally this and that. That's the thing. This and also that.
Okay, so they're both correct.
And what I advocate is don't need to make it either or, but make it actually both.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yes. And why
I didn't,
both? Right? Why also don't throw out the after this life? Huh? So that you have a wider scope. You have a wider scope. But the wider scope is only useful if the wider scope allows us to attend to the here and now. And to attend to the here and now is how you have just expressed it. That these realms are not only something that happened later or something that already happened. Somehow I got out of those places. Now I'm in this realm. You know? So leave the doors wide open for, like, yes, in the past, I may have come from some of these places. In the future, I may go to some of these places. But right now, because when I attend to the right now and see how myself and others cycle through these realms, even within right the span of one day, the way we go in and out of these realms. To have these two sides remain open for the broad view as well will make the attending to the present not so stuffy. And not so paranoid.
exactly. The response was mostly a fear response.
Yeah.
I'm going to be reborn into one of these other realms and I'm going to be screwed. It's like, no. It's here. It's now. It might be then too. It was an excellent point.
Yes.
But it's look around and see. You're seeing I can see examples of all of these realms right now.
And when we
So
choose,
that was like, wow, amazing.
Exactly. When we choose, then the whole point, right? Also, even understanding all these realms is, it says, now you choose. Choices make a difference. So then back to Saga Dawa season, let's choose the causes of happiness. Now, our habits will take us in another direction. When you discover that, don't beat yourself over that, but rather go, well, look, again, habit one. And bring it back,
Oh, that habit one is so nasty.
And bring it back, reshape habits. And so that's what practice is, reshaping habits. We have been practicing all our lifetimes, from lifetime to lifetime. We have been practicing. So if we say, oh, I cannot practice, no, that's not true. You're either practicing suffering or you're practicing happiness. Now, here's the thing. No matter how much suffering you practice, you never get good at it. But when you practice happiness, you will get good at it.
Mhm.
Because happiness is our nature, not our right, you know. You don't have a right to it. It's not an issue of right. You know, that's also part of the problem, you know, I think these days. We all want our right to be happy. But it's not a right, it's recognizing it's our nature. So now exercise the nature, you know. And that's the Buddha nature, whatever fancy term we use for it.
But it feels like suffering is the easier, softer way.
I don't know if we make decisions based on like, you know, like, oh, suffering is easier, so I'm going to go that way. No, it's actually mistaken identity. We're like, oh, that looks like happiness.
Oh, I know that one.
Yeah, you know, oh, that second scoop of ice cream, that must be happiness.
Oh, yes. Rocky Road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, like snapping back at that person, that looks like happiness, you know.
Oh, mhm.
Snapping at myself, you know, that looks like happiness. It's a case of mistaken identity. I don't think any of us go, ooh, that's suffering and that feels easier. Oh, I'm going to go that way. No. It's a case of mistaken identity. To wallow in the mud is a mistaken identity. You know, we wallow in the mud and think, oh, maybe that's a spa, you know. Mud treatment. It's not. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So anyway, ta-ta, I have to go now.
Okay,
Time for the
thank
group.
you.
And anyway, and next Sunday, unfortunately, I can't meet next Sunday. We have a work day out at the land. And then I will be on the road for 6 weeks.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay,
too
So
much.
you are nearing the end of this text, I believe.
Mhm.
yes, we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
9.
Yeah. So again, this text, yeah, as you all finish this text, know that, that the the way is written has a particular function. And don't take it so literally. and see it as bits of things to chew on, and slowly like it can kind of arise, the significance of it. So between now and then, meaning my 6 weeks of wandering around, we'll figure out, like what's the next thing for the script to do, maybe move in the direction of more practice oriented, text. We kind of go back and forth, right? Milarepa is just all over the place. Then this is very, and they're all, again, this is what I mean by immersion. To be exposed to the whole range that the tradition has to offer is not to say that you have to do it this way or that way. It's like these are all the resources. Yeah. So so let's, we will identify something
Okay.
as the next kind of focus. Okay, thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lai.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's lovely.
Very useful.
Yeah. So we have a few more minutes if you want to talk about what he said. Or
The wisdom in this book is difficult for me to extract. It's like a mining operation.
yeah,
But the two things that come to mind that right now, it's not limited just to these two or real gems. So I'm wondering how many other gems are in this book that we went right over and I missed.
yeah. Yeah,
Well, yeah, and I mean that's, Dr. Lai can't make it every week, and that makes it tough. Yeah. He's busy.
In terms of what he was saying, I thought one of the most provocative things actually was seeing uncertainty clearly. You know, and what that actually means. I know that there's a kind of a surface, well, I don't know, anything could happen, right? But there's a certainty to that as well, there's a kind of, so what is that, what's the experience of clear uncertainty as we're talking about it? As if it's an experience, or if it's a thing. It's a neither this or that, but it's something that points to this. I don't know.
One I'm thinking about what popped in my head, and it's funny. Is an instruction that an Epiphan often gives in his guided meditation, which is he's talking about living in this space where there's not thought, but thoughts are going to come, and to be curious about what the next thought's going to be. And I think the experience of that uncertainty is I'm kind of guessing around, for an answer to that is it involves a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.